So Carl from New York writes in and asks, what's the difference between nonviolent communication and authentic relating? And this is a great question. If you are on the journey of wanting to develop your communication skills, perhaps motivated by some pain, relationships not working, having difficulty expressing your needs, any number of pains that can occur in relating in relationships, of which there are a lot, you are likely going to encounter nonviolent communication and authentic relating in that search. And it's useful to know what are the differences between the two and what are they for. I have some experience with nonviolent communication. I'm definitely not an expert of it. I have done some courses, and I have a lot more experience with authentic relating and have developed my own kind of approach to this particular modality. Anyway, where these two things are similar is that they're desiring to create healthier relationships with others, being able to healthier, safer, gentler, more empathic relationships with each other, which is an admirable and desirable thing for us, right? We definitely don't want violent, which is what they use in nonviolent communication, conversation full of conflict and drama and everything. That's painful. So we want to address that and move beyond that somehow. And there are a lot of reasons for why those things occur. Some of them can't just be solved in communication patterns. We need to understand the nervous system and attachment and bonding and all of that other stuff. But we'll get to that another time, put that to the side. So nonviolent communication was kind of promoted in the 70s or by a man named Marshall Rosenberg. And he was really taking from the work of Carl Rogers, which was the proponent of person-centered psychotherapies, which really puts the person at the center of a therapeutic modality versus prescribing and diagnosing, prescribing particular interventions and diagnosing based on a set of criteria, really a split between psychology and psychotherapy. And so NVC was designed to reduce or remove the conflict that can occur in relationship from really the basis that conflict occurs when certain needs aren't being met and when we're not valuing each other's needs. So NVC is a somewhat prescriptive model of relating. It has a pattern, a form of pattern that if we follow, we're said to have a certain outcome, which means that we'll feel more heard and we'll have a better understanding of our relationship and what each other need and what needs and what we can do for each other to meet those needs. And that if our needs are met in relationship, then we'll feel safer, healthier, happier, and more connected. Personally, I think that's a little bit basic, and I have an evolutionary perspective on it, and I want to go deeper than those places, and hopefully you'll stick around for more of those explorations. But anyway, in MVC, there's like a 4-step process. The first step is to make an observation about whatever the instance that's causing tension is. Perhaps I'm saying when you were 37 minutes late for our lunch meeting, our lunch date. It's an observation. Then we move into feelings. We start to express what are our emotions or sensations free of the thought or the story, the things that we're making up. So I felt hurt and deflated and alone, so I can share myself vulnerably. And then we start to identify needs. And what I realize is that I have a strong need for respect. Okay? I'm communicating to you what I'm actually needing to alleviate the discomfort of feeling hurt and alone and deflated, which is leading me to disconnect from you and probably giving me an impulse to want to act violently. It's probably having me want to be a bit snarky or withholding some affection from you or something. So I'm attempting to share with you my internal reality to alleviate that tension. And then lastly, I might make a request. In future, are you able to arrive on time? And then you hear that and you're able to meet that request or not. And ideally, we throw in some reflection and we discuss and go a little bit deeper that so we feel really understood. And the promise of this is if we do this, we'll alleviate the conflict and the tension out of our relationship. Our needs will be met and we'll have a deeper connection. And there we go. Carry on with your life. And that's really NVC in a nutshell. So it's a specifically applied communication pattern for a certain kind of aspect of relating. Those principles, if you learn them, you can kind of reverse engineer them and figure out what's actually important here and how do they work. Making requests is an act of stating our boundaries. Speaking out and owning our desires and speaking our needs and our feelings is really our vulnerability. And then we can also practice listening for the deeper needs in someone. And this is how we can have a more peaceful, connected life with others. It's really beautiful practice. But I find it limited in that it doesn't necessarily expand into all aspects of relating, not just conflict-oriented ones. I mean, we can draw the listening from MBC into those places, but I think that there's more nuance that's happening in relationship. There's not just conflict or no conflict. There is sexual attraction, there's romance, there's friendship, there's the navigation of the day-to-day life, there's social bonding, there's flirting, and there's banter, and there's all of these different aspects of communication. So it's a much broader territory. And we could, in a way, perhaps kind of learn them all independently, or at least what authentic relating does for me and how I've organized it, we can look beneath communication patterns at what are some of the base ways of relating and what are the outcomes they create. And that's really what authentic relating is to me, is it's a way of understanding how relating works and being able to do it in a way that creates more authenticity of self and other, meaning that I can be more of who I am and also be with you in a way that you're able to be more of who you are. And so we have a more authentic connection. We're more deeply connected to our own innate essence or unique self, and we're expressing and receiving each other from that place. Now, there are different skill sets that we can develop, and as we develop and we train and we practice these skill sets, our capacity and our elegance at relating increases, it improves. Just like learning a musical instrument. You learn to play chords and you learn to strum if you're playing a guitar, and then over time you start put a strum and the changing of chords together, and then you put them together into more and more patterns, and you add timing and tempo and everything, and then you're starting to play music, and then you get even better at playing music and you're able to free jam with others. And that's kind of the pinnacle of musical intelligence in a way, when you're able to free form, co-create music with others. It's like, I'm not a musician, but I can imagine that would be an ecstatic experience to be in that. Relating allows us to have that same kind of journey, but with communication. So at first we kind of have to do practices and figure out how do I do this thing and what outcomes does it have and how do I get better at it? And then we get more and more free form, and we kind of drop the practices and we're in the free flow, and then we actually are in the beautiful, majestical, incredible unfolding of intimacy with another human being or other human beings. It's not necessarily just romantic or sexual. It's definitely not just for that. It's for with our children, with our parents, with our co-workers, with our friends, with our lovers, with our romantic partners, all of it. Okay. So I kind of broke authentic relating down into seven-ish. There's some variations as well, major skill sets. And we have embodied listening, the ability to listen really deeply to another that welcomes them out. We have reflective listening, which is being able to let the other person be heard. So I'm letting them know by sharing back to them what I'm hearing, that I'm hearing them. And we can develop reflective listening to incredibly nuanced and skillful places where you're actually learning to hear the things they're not saying and offer that back in a way that leads to deeper insight. And that's a very fun place to go. And then we also have curiosity, how I can use kind of my own innate curiosity and the power of inquiry to explore more deeply into you, which is going to feel really enlivening because you may start discovering aspects of you that you'd never even encountered before. And that's like when you get in one of those conversations, it's like that's where you want to be. It's a really beautiful place to be. So that's the listening components. And we also have the expressing components, which I call embodied expressing, or our capacity to share ourselves vulnerably, reveal what's deeper. And this is really powerful practice to get into. And there's lots of nuance to this too, as there is to all of it. And then desire, being able to advocate and speak for what we want and need and value and desire in this life. and it's a form of vulnerability too, but I can speak for that and advocate for that. And then we also have boundaries, which is how I moderate and mediate what comes into and goes out of me. This is very important and a huge topic. And then lastly, we have attunement, which is developing awareness of the space between us and how to navigate the space between us more and more. And this is a huge rabbit hole, and all of these skill sets are big rabbit holes. So we learn to develop these skill sets, and as a result, we have different ways of maneuvering and being in relationship that leads to more of the outcome that we want, which is connection and intimacy and safety and healthy relating and being able to navigate conflict and negotiate and flirt and banter and get closer together and all of that stuff. And we develop the capacity to do that for ourselves versus wait for some magical moment with the special person. We start to realize that we can kind of create this form of relating with anyone, and you get to choose, do we want to have eros or not in there? Do we want to start to cultivate feelings of love for each other or not? Like, how do we want to navigate our relating? We get more choice over that. So that's really my take on the differences between these two modalities. Obviously, I'm biased towards what I'm teaching, which is authentic relating, because I've found that it's, rather than learning something and then just applying it over and over, I'm like really learning the skills that allows me to make it my own. If you learn authentic relating, you can develop skills so you're not doing authentic relating. You don't have to sit around and do authentic relating. You are more authentic in your relating, and it's your own. There are no language patterns to memorize or learn. You learn instead what makes those magic language patterns, which are really training wheels, effective. And so you go beyond them, beyond and beneath them. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions about authentic relating, attachment, polarity, intimacy, you can check out below. There is a link to drop a question. I'm going to start answering more of these questions. I'd love to, I love answering these kind of questions. So drop me down. You can subscribe to my newsletter, and there's some great courses that I have available too if you want to look into that. Thanks again.